As Rayburn and I rejoined the others in the veranda, Mr. Nevinson told us to sling on our haversacks and make preparations to leave in accordance with what he had told us earlier. In silence we obeyed, Rayburn and I and Mr. Nevinson each picking up a spade in addition to the lantern and cutlass we already carried. At a signal from Mr. Nevinson, agreed upon before, we moved off towards the kitchen steps, our foot treads sounding loud and solemn on the floor, for we all wore thick, heavy boots. It might have been some sacred religious procession. We had agreed to leave the lights burning in the cottage. The moon was overhead, and this side of the cottage was in deep shadow. We paused at the top of the kitchen steps, Mr. Nevinson and I in front, behind Mr. Nevinson, Rayburn, behind me, Jessie, and behind Jessie, her mother. We stood there listening to the night. All the old sounds were there, but coming to us through the uncertain veil that had been drawn between us and the normal. The river bubbled at intervals or gurgled. The frogs chirruped as the whim took them, one near the sawmill, one amidst the shrubs that grew near the water's edge, one farther off near the silent loggies. The fireflies arced and crisscrossed, but feebly, reduced by the moonlight to less than half their usual brilliance. I could hear Jessie breathing behind me. Once she touched my elbow, and the thick khaki material of the shorts I wore could not muffle completely the ticking of my watch. A brave, lusty ticking, a thread of sanity, commonplace, and inspiring hope. No fantasy troubled it. A spade, I think it must have been Mr. Nevinson's, made a clank as it was shifted slightly. It must have collided with the facing of the door. I heard Mrs. Nevinson sigh. My host murmured, "Now we go." The notes of the flute rose from near the foot of the steps. Events moved on to the climax. In the story of My Bones and My Flute. A soft, quavering sound came from Jessie as we began to descend. The chilly morning air shivered through my lungs refreshingly. For an instant, I almost believed that there was no more apprehensiveness in the atmosphere. Our lanterns burned steadily and clearly. Our footsteps made dull clumps on the steps. I had not been wrong. The notes of the flute shifted as I had calculated they would have done, towards the river. We circled the cottage, feeling the wet grass under our heavy boots, exactly as though the actual moisture were penetrating the leather to the soles of our feet. This is an illusion we all of us experienced. It still remains a complete mystery. We moved towards the bank of the river at a point to the north of the small pier alongside which, not 10 hours before, the weekly steamer had come to discharge the supplies. This was where our boat was moored. The sound of the flute, however, veered south, upstream. It did not cease as we got aboard the craft, and as we pushed off, it came towards us again in the most uncannily intelligent manner, as though to re-establish its former distance between us and itself. I recall that Jessie clutched my arm and muttered, "Heavens, Milton, is this really happening to us?" It was the first time any of us had spoken since Mr. Nevinson had given the word to go at the top of the kitchen steps. The sky was still indigo in the east as we began to move along the bank in an upstream direction, though I knew that within less than an hour dawn would be breaking. The flute continued ahead of us, leisurely, clear, and more deliberate now than ever. a spectral flute guiding us towards the remains of a Dutch planter who had lived in the middle of the 18th century. There are many aspects of our situation that strike an unmistakably humorous note. I'm quite certain that had I recorded every phrase we each of us uttered, could such a verbatim report have been possible, these events would have seemed like something out of Gilbert and Sullivan, with music complete. Even as it stands now, so much depends upon one's attitude in viewing our plight. So much depends on the scope of your individual imagination to encompass the uniquely fantastic nature of these happenings. Anyway, there it was. Slowly we moved up the river, hugging the bank, Rayburn and Mr. Nevinson and I rowing, while ahead of us, perhaps about 20 yards distant, those spirit notes continued monotonously on the chilly, breezeless air, and around us that psychic pressing quality of the ether itself seemed to warn us that being in the open in no way shunted us out of range of the forces whose influence was focused upon us. Rayburn sat in the bows, the two women amidships, and Mr. Nevinson and I astern. The tide was in flood, and as a result aided our progress. Now and then I would ship my oar and flash the beam of my torch on the dense, billowing foliage of trees that overhung the water. The leaves would spring into individual shape, detailed and clear, with the shadowed spaces behind them probing back into the impenetrable gloom and mystery that simmered in the humid depths. I could glimpse shiny Eta palm berries drifting slowly on the surface of the black water, and mauve wildflowers sometimes. Once the golden dust of mora blossoms eddied past our bows. And like a live, intelligent thing, that invisible flute kept sending its clear notes through the dank, leafy air, 20 or 30 yards ahead of us always, incredible and weird, a symbol for us of life and death. If it ceased, we knew that we were lost. If it continued, we could hope. The stars sparkled up at us from the smooth black water, and the sky seemed more terrible in its immensity as a scooped bowl beneath us than as a dome overhead. Often I had the sensation that we were about to plunge irretrievably down into an emptiness of speckled gloom instead of advancing on a level with the river, and a vague nausea would attack me. We must have proceeded around 2 bends in the river when we had the first inkling of the opposition that lay ahead. Rayburn called, "Tacuba, sir! Steer clear! Out!" A tacuba, in Guyana jungle parlance, is any obstruction, chiefly a fallen tree, that occurs along a river or creek. I thought that Rayburn sounded a little puzzled when he uttered the caution, so I called back, "But I don't remember seeing a tacuba anywhere near this spot, Rayburn." "Me too, sir, but something ahead, I can see it." But almost before the words were out of his mouth, I had got my oar shipped and had brought the beam of my torch to play on the water. We peered ahead, the boat changing course in the meantime. The flute, for some reason, seemed to become more animated. The notes came faster, as though to express alarm, to warn us of subtle peril. A dark, humped object lay about 40 feet, 10 points to port approximately ahead of us. In the moonlight, it had the appearance of an old tree trunk embedded below and rearing its jagged, mossy stump above the water. In short, the commonest form of tacuba. We watched it in an anxious, suspicious silence. The flute moved close along the bank as before, unheedful of our heading out slightly into the stream. Its alarmed animation continued. Without warning, the tacuba moved, heaved up, and began to spread out on the water in a sluggish mist. Jessie cried out. Rayburn snatched up one of the 4 Dietz lanterns, which we had kept continuously alight, and swung it to and fro over the bows. The air shook, and the ugly mist vanished at a flash, seeming to dissipate amidst the white beam of my torch. The flute became leisurely again. "Get back into our original course," I warned. "We must keep where the path of the flute moves." "Don't you think that there may be a greater danger of encountering that thing if we resume the old course?" Mr. Nevinson asked me. I shook my head. "Don't think so, sir. And what's more, I believe we're nearing the track opening. That probably accounts for the sudden manifestation of that mock Takuba. They know we're about to discover the track, and they're trying to hinder us in every way possible. We've got to keep close along the bank so as to be ready when the flute turns off into the track opening. We can't afford to risk missing it. Mrs. Nevinson took up a lantern and said that she would keep it overside as a precaution against the demon mist's reappearance, and I told her that that was an excellent idea. I would have asked Jessie to do the same, but she was in too nervous a state. She had just been sick over the gunwale, and sat now with her hands pressed to her temples. We resumed the old course. The jungle foamed out at us monotonously, glimmering dully in the moonlight, but even after we had rounded another bend, there was still no sign of an opening that might indicate a track. Then Mrs. Nevinson exclaimed and pointed. "What is it?" asked her husband. "That clump of manicold palms. I seem to remember it. I'm sure I've seen it in all my dreams. It was always just near the track opening." Something significant had happened. In the story of My Bones and My Flute,